in which our protagonists, Anna and Levine, finally meet, and in which one of their tales comes to an end. Chapter 15. He did not know whether it was late or early. The candles were all burning low. Dolly had just come to the study to suggest that the doctor lie down. Levine sat there, listening to the doctor tell about a quack mesmerist and watching the ashes of his cigarette. It was a period of rest, and he had become oblivious. He had entirely forgotten what was going on now. He listened to the doctor's story and understood it. Suddenly there was a scream unlike anything he'd ever heard. The scream was so terrible that Levine did not even jump up, but, holding his breath, gave the doctor a frightened, questioning look. The doctor cocked his head to one side, listened, and smiled approvingly. It was all so extraordinary that nothing any longer astonished Levine. Probably it should be so, he thought, and went on sitting. Whose scream was it? He jumped up, ran on tiptoe to the bedroom, went round Lizaveta Petrovna and the princess, and stood in his place at the head of the bed. The screaming had ceased, but something was changed now. What? He did not see or understand, nor did he want to see and understand. But he saw it from Lizaveta Petrovna's face. Her face was stern and pale, and still just as resolute, though her jaws twitched a little and her eyes were fixed on Kitty. Kitty's burning, tormented face, with a strand of hair struck to her sweaty forehead, was turned to him and sought his eyes. Her raised hands asked for his. Seizing his hands in her sweaty hand, she started pressing them to her face. Don't leave. Don't leave. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. She spoke quickly. Mamma, take my earrings. They bother me. You're not afraid? Soon, Lizaveta Petrovna, soon. She spoke quickly, and tried to smile, but suddenly her face became distorted and she pushed him away from her. No, it's terrible. I'll die. I'll die. Go, go, she cried, and again came that scream that was unlike anything in the world. Levine clutched his head and ran out of the room. Never mind, it's all right, Dolly said after him. But whatever they said, he knew that all was now lost. Leaning his head against the doorpost, he stood in the next room and heard a shrieking and howling such as he had never heard before, and he knew that these cries were coming from what had once been Kitty. He had long ceased wishing for the child. He now hated this child. He did not even wish for her to live now. He only wished for an end to this terrible suffering. Doctor, what is it? What is it? My God, he said, seizing the doctor by the arm as he came in. It's nearly over, said the doctor, and the doctor's face was so serious as he said it that Levine understood this nearly over to mean she was dying. Forgetting himself, he ran into the bedroom. The first thing he saw was Lizaveta Petrovna's face. It was still more stern and frowning. Kitty's face was not there. In place of it, where it used to be, was something dreadful both in its strained look and in the sound that came from it. He leaned his head against the wooden bedstead, feeling that his heart was bursting. The terrible screaming would not stop. It became still more terrible, and then, as if reaching the final limit of the terrible, it suddenly stopped. Levine did not believe his ears, but there could be no doubt. The screaming stopped, and there was a quiet stirring, a rustle and quick breathing, and her faltering, alive, gentle, and happy voice softly said, "It's over." He raised his head, her arms resting strengthlessly on the blanket, remarkably beautiful and quiet. She silently looked at him and tried, but was unable to smile. And suddenly, from that mysterious and terrible, unearthly world in which he had lived for those 22 hours, Levine felt himself instantly transported into the former ordinary world, but radiant now, with such a new light of happiness that he could not bear it. The taut strings all snapped. Sobs and tears of joy, which he could never have foreseen, rose in him with such force, heaving his whole body, that for a long time they prevented him from speaking. Falling on his knees beside the bed, he held his wife's hand to his lips, kissing it, and the hand responded to his kisses with a weak movement of the fingers. And meanwhile, there at the foot of the bed, in the deft hands of Lizaveta Petrovna, like a small flame over a lamp, wavered the life of a human being who had never existed before, and who, with the same right, with the same importance for itself, would live and produce its own kind. Alive, alive, and it's a boy. Don't worry. Levine heard the voice of Lizaveta Petrovna, who was slapping the baby's back with a trembling hand. "Mamma, is it true?" said Kitty's voice. She was answered only by the princess' sobs. And amidst the silence, as the indubitable reply to the mother's question, a voice was heard, quite different from all the subdued voices speaking in the room. It was the bold, brazen cry, not intent on understanding anything, of a new human being who had appeared incomprehensibly from somewhere. Earlier, if Levine had been told that Kitty had died, and that he had died with her, and that they had angels for children, and that God was there before them, none of it would have surprised him. But now, having come back to the world of reality, he made great mental efforts to understand that she was alive and well, and that the being shrieking so desperately was his son. Kitty was alive, her sufferings were over, and he was inexpressibly happy. That he understood, and in that he was fully happy. But the baby? Whence, why, and who was he? He simply could not understand, could not get accustomed to this thought. It seemed to him something superfluous, an overabundance, and for a long time he could not get used to it. If you enjoy this format, please leave a like and subscribe, and return tomorrow for the next chapter.